Let's begin today with some questions. I want you to raise your hand if you answer yes to the following. When speaking to others, have you ever felt unheard? Have you ever had your thoughts shut down by someone else? Finally, have you ever done these things to another? We can all envy someone free from these experiences, but I want to highlight that intellectual intolerance is not an individual problem. From a cold internet culture to political polarization, we often treat the world of ideas as a battlefield. Why is that? Ideas are not only concepts, they are the lenses through which we examine reality. The real world is complex. It lies far beyond our cognitive abilities. Thus, we need models in order to simplify the world into something we can comprehend. These models shape how we experience reality, and they become a crucial part of being. So we jealously protect and project them. This is mine. This is true. But ultimately, we protect our ideas because we think, this is me. This internalization of ideas looms large today. In certain medieval conceptions, ideas manifested themselves in the external world. A flying flock of birds in the sky would be a visual manifestation of lust. Now today, both the notion that ideas physically manifest themselves and seeing birds as sex symbols seems a little bit bizarre. But I want to underline that our internality is related to contemporary history for two reasons. First, to highlight that our internalized conception of ideas is not inherent to humanity for all of its history. Second, being hypersensitive when people question our ideas is not an individual flaw. Contemporary Western society is susceptible to this as a whole. For instance, in a viral open letter titled, "Why I'm Leaving the Cult of Wokeness," Africa Brooke, a writer, public speaker, and sobriety advocate, explains why she is branching away from contemporary manifestations of the social justice movement. She recounts an event in which she felt compelled to publicly humiliate an individual who had messaged her privately to question some of her positions. Shaming and silencing people that are willing to engage in civil dialogue is a dangerous attitude in a world full of problems that require global cooperation. Now, the focus of today is not cancel culture or wokeness. I do not want to criticize any particular group. I merely highlight that to uncritically assume we are better than the other side of the debate is unhelpful, even harmful. When we dismiss the ideas of others, we do a disservice to the ideas we hold dear. We confuse them for reality. And once we do this, we become deaf to all criticisms, both good and bad. This is really one of the most prideful things we can do. Excessive pride requires an antidote built on humility, and it is just so. Today, I emphasize that the ideas floating in our internal space are not completely ours. Throughout this talk, I advocate for a concept I call caterpillar ideas. In this framework, what appears to be an independent, dazzling idea, the butterfly, emerges only after a sequence of superficially modest notions, the caterpillar. On this note, we need to be humble, because it is a humbling moment when we accept that most of what we believe is derived from an external source. Our perceptions are influenced by what came before. Our achievements are not just our own. Newton puts it best. If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. The world of ideas should not be treated as a battlefield. It should be treated as our shared heritage. I like Newton's concept for the following reasons. First, it pays tribute to past generations. I do not want to romanticize human history. Much of it was brutish, short, unfair. But even if I accepted the wildest conceptions of eternal progress, I want to appreciate the foundation underneath my feet. When I look back on my life, I doubt that all my actions and thoughts will pass the moral standards of future generations. I would like them to be lenient on my sentencing. Secondly, this appreciation for past achievements can spark our curiosity, and this lets us become better people. Many of us can relate to the classic story. Two classmates, student A and B, both like math and are good at math. The following year, student A has a fantastic teacher, student B has a horrid one. 9 out of 10 times, student A will excel, and student B will see a drop in performance. Because everything else being equal, we do not put as much effort into things that we do not enjoy. And a good instructor is key. I have almost always had wonderful teachers, but I think we have all suffered from bad ones. In these moments, look towards past generations for instruction. They offer valuable lessons. Even when they fail, we can thank them, because they save us from making the same mistakes. In this way, the dead can truly improve our lives. However, perhaps Newton goes too far. When we contemplate the greats, we are in awe, yet we can also feel intimidated. We ask ourselves, is there really nothing new under the sun? Are my individual contributions puny in comparison to those of my intellectual ancestors? These are insecurities that can plague anyone, in any field. Composers, football players, economists, writers. Once we overcome the hyper-internalization of ideas and see their sources in the external world, the great giant figures of the past can make us feel small. But this too is an illusion. Our intellectual contributions are not puny, because our heritage of ideas was also built collectively. The contemporary mind has a bias towards the individual. Once we qualify our internal space, we slip into the mistake of attributing ideas to other individuals. However, Newton's very metaphor was expressed before by multiple thinkers. This very fact subtly challenges his imagery. Here I make my own humble contribution to a traditional metaphor. We are not dwarves standing on giants. We are dwarves standing on dwarves, standing on dwarves. It is a small but radical change. Let's look at some examples in the poetry of Dante and Shelley. These are excerpts from Dante's Commedia and Shelley's Ode to the West Wind. Underlined in yellow, we can note a poetic tradition in which falling leaves act as a metaphor for mortality. Each poet uses this metaphor for slightly different purposes. For Dante, it establishes a marriage between Christian and pagan illusions. For Shelley, it captures the cycle of death and rebirth. Both pieces are magnificent. If you haven't read them, I urge you to do so. Yet, they rely on a pre-existing tradition. This may illustrate why some of us may feel so intimidated by past thinkers. Dante's Commedia over here takes inspiration from Virgil, who in turn took this metaphor from Homer. When I first read Dante, I did not know this. Dante's intellect seemed like an ocean. It was distant from me. It was beyond human. In the 21st century, it is very difficult to keep track of all the threads that make up our heritage of ideas. So we aggrandize certain individuals, and we ignore a rich tradition before them. This is not to imply that individuals cannot be brilliant. They can. I simply suggest that great ideas are a continuous process. Let's move on. What are the consequences of this perspective? If I can convey one notion to you, one thought, I would advocate for the power of caterpillar ideas. Human beings are social creatures. We live and work mostly with others. And whether it's a classroom or a town hall debate, we have an intrinsic need for dialogue. In any social dialogue, you will find rhetorically talented people that dominate the conversation, or at least are confident in expressing their views. But there are many who are not. Many people think their ideas are incomplete or unworthy. The tragedy here is that the shy, and even the actively excluded, have something important to say. When others are silenced, we are all worse off. But if we conceive of ideas as a collective process, then the incomplete, the marginally insightful, even the mediocre can be refined through a collective process. Inclusive dialogue can elevate humanity, because together we can make diamonds from dirt. And that is the power of caterpillar ideas. So what am I saying here? Does this mean all ideas would converge together and live under one house? Is it really as easy as that? Do we just need to let everyone have their say to achieve global harmony? Probably not. Our cultures are beautifully diverse, and they are sometimes incompatible. People value different things, and what one person believes, another person might find grotesque. As a result, our global heritage of ideas is not really a tower. It is more like a tree that's branching out eternally. Nevertheless, seeing ideas as a shared heritage does incentivize us to let go of some of our prejudice. What we believe and what is true are not the same thing. And when we appreciate our heritage, we can understand why other people appreciate their intellectual heritage. This is not easy. It takes effort, it takes time, it takes commitment. And I would never presume to ask or expect that people should do it at all times. But even just sometimes, it can pay off big. I am from Ecuador, but I lived most of my life on the other side of the world, in the Philippines. While I was there, I went to multiple different schools, and I learned from people that came from all over the world. It was a privilege and a gift. But I realize now that moving often when one is young can make one's identity brittle. And I felt lonely sometimes. In one of these schools, I met a very interesting boy. He was funny, and he was nice and kind to me. And he told me very casually he was a fascist. Yeah. I had met people before that spoke of exclusion, racial superiority, and hate. But they had always been visibly hateful. This boy was not. I remember looking at this kind boy and realizing that his beliefs were antithetical to who I was. Still, I realize now this was an incredible opportunity for me. Most people that invalidate the existence of others also actively discomfort them. They may even threaten, hurt, or kill them. But this scenario was different. And being young, I was gloriously curious. So he spoke to me about his perspective, and I mostly listened. As the weeks passed, he gave me something that I cherish to this day. He lent me a book that I would have never read otherwise. Julius Evola's Revolt Against the Modern World. We do not need to dissect this work today. You just need to understand that Julius Evola's racial views directly influenced the policies of Mussolini, the former Prime Minister of Italy. Julius Evola advocated for a rejection of modernity and a return to a strict feudal caste system. He claimed the superiority of the masculine over the feminine and the spiritual superiority of the Aryan soul. I disagreed with essentially everything written in that text. And I still do. But I learned a lot. I was immersed in a completely different intellectual tradition. And I realized that even the most hateful organizations are built upon a complex set of ideas that have an internal logic. Since then, I have had the privilege to meet many new intellectual traditions, nearly all of them more convincing than racial souls. And I have learned a lot. I've reevaluated my positions and sometimes even changed them entirely as a result. It is good to know that even when others can be blinded by hate, you yourself can choose to see them and their ideas as human. That is the true gift the boy gave me on that day. So, how can we inspire caterpillar ideas? Basically, there are two ways. You can empower the caterpillar within yourself and you can nurture it in others. First, we need to connect to our intellectual roots. Find the ideas you hold close to you and explore their development in the external world. You will find greater nuance than within yourself. You will find parts of your ideas you do not agree with. But you will be more confident in what you believe and more critical of its limitations. This gives us the courage to appreciate our ideas while also building on them incrementally. How can we empower others? Here I take inspiration once again from Dante. Dante's Commedia is perhaps one of the greatest works of literature in the world. And the key literary device of this text is the allusion to other texts. What does this tell us? When we acknowledge what inspires us, we open up room in the dialogue. Celebrating the past can empower the living. 700 years of witty, incredible commentary on the Commedia is a testament to this. However, if signaling that ideas are built incrementally is not enough, invite people directly into the conversation. Actively make others comfortable. We have this tendency to be enthusiastic in expressing our own views, like I'm doing right now. But we have to enlarge this love towards the entire process of the dialogue. Let's end on a high note. Please close your eyes. Now, I want you to imagine someone who inspired your thoughts. Someone who let you into the conversation. Open your eyes. I urge you, be that person for someone else today. If you do this, you are already building the world collectively. Thank you for your time.